So we'll talk about the risk management plan. That's going to be obviously the component of the project management plan, and that's going to determine how risk management activities are going to be structured and performed. So it's going to identify the methodology, the approach, and the tools that are going to be used when you're managing risks. And it's going to also document roles and responsibilities of the people that are involved, and identifies the budgeting and the scheduling for risk management activities. It's also going to specify risk categories. So when we look at some of the components that you could have in there, would be a risk strategy. So, what's the approach to risk management for the project? And we'll look at, what some of those are here in a little bit. The methodology, so what specific tools or approaches or even data sources are you going to use to perform your risk management for the project? Roles and responsibilities, it's going to, tell you about the support and also the team membership for each type of action in the management or the risk management plan. So who's going to be doing what, and who's going to be responsible for different actions for supporting and leading risk management. It's also going to talk about funding, and that's where you have the budgeting information that's going to estimate and identify the risk funds that are going to need to be included in the cost baseline, and how contingency and management reserves are going to be estimated. You could also have things like timing. That's going to identify the points that the risk management process, or at what points risk management is going to be performed on the project, and it'll determine what guidelines for use of the schedule contingency reserves. So it's basically going to determine what risk management activities are going to be part of the project schedule. Risk categories, you're going to have a risk breakdown structure. That's going to document what sources a project risk may come from in a risk identification activity. And the sources could be things like technical, external, financial, organizational, things like that. It also has stakeholder appetite, which is going to basically identify the amount of risk that is acceptable to stakeholders. So there's different thresholds that need to be considered when you're determining the probability and the impact of risk during the project. And we'll talk about that too, what those are. So we want to talk about a definition of risk and probability, risk, probability, and impact. That's where you're going to define the levels of probability and impact for using terms such as very unlikely to almost certain, with a respective numerical value that's going to be assigned to the individual risks. And then the probability impact matrix, that's going to map the probability of the occurrence for each risk and the impact on the project if the risk occurs. Reporting formats, that's going to define how project risk information will be documented and communicated to stakeholders. And then tracking documents, that's going to be determine or describe how risk activities are going to be recorded and how risk management process will be audited during the course of the project.